Hey, Savages, welcome back to Tabletop Tango. The band is back. Me and Carl together again. One whole, united. Yeah. So we were talking, while we do have some other subjects we want to get to, I think we were both kind of talking about, let's redo a lot of the videos we did when we first started, right, Carl?
Yeah, the idea is we were a novice back then. Now we've ranked up. We're seasoned, and
are we seasoned or are we like advanced too? As far as production value goes, I don't know. I'm not sure. You guys decide, but yeah, we ranked up, so I guess.
So we'd like to revisit some of those. And one of the videos that was pretty popular, people really enjoyed, I think, and I got a lot of feedback on, was edges, doing a deep dive on edges. And so we thought we'd return to that. And do a series of videos on edges, and we're going to start off with background edges, naturally. And this will be a couple episodes probably. And along the way, we're going to kind of rank them a little bit on how we feel about them now in 2025 versus maybe what we thought before, now that we've had experience with
when we were naive and young and
when
with
Suede
glints in
new.
our eyes.
Yeah, Suede was new.
Yeah, when it was all new. So yeah, this is a even deeper dive than we did before.
Okay. Well, Carl, as Eric says, Carl, play those tunes.
Savage World, one of the best games today. Savage World.
All right, hey everybody, welcome back. That was quite the intro. So you got Eric and Carl, Tabletop Tango. Always look at the bubbles, do the stuff. We'd love likes, subscribes. We do it. It's a hobby. We have it. We have fun. And so it's all about seeing those numbers go up, and those are always fun to see. And then any support goes right into hosting and buying stuff and, things like that. So anyway, Eric, what are we doing? What are we talking about? Let's get into it.
Yeah, we're going to do the background edges. We're going to do a little bit of deeper dive. I mean, mainly just we're going to be, referencing some stuff more. And we're going to do a tier list. Now, the tier list is just for kind of reference. My idea was for if somebody's kind of new to the game or newer to the game or they're unsure about what they want, it's kind of a quick and dirty way to be like, oh, this is a good option or not a good option. Now, I want to say, I'm not, these aren't tiered in exactly like, this is good and this one sucks. I want to explain the tiers. So do we have that page up, Carl?
Oh, do we ever? There we go.
Okay, cool.
The magic of television.
This is not the tier list. Yeah, this is not the tier list itself, but this is kind of description. So when we put something in a tier, it's so A means that it's universally useful and strong or even very powerful as far as effects go. It's pretty much always a good pick regardless of game type within that category, if that makes sense, Carl. So basically, if something we've ranked that's an A, we believe that it's something you could pretty much pick universally, and it's going to be a very strong option that you'll use all the time. B means that it's either universally useful, but maybe not quite as strong, or it's very strong, but maybe it's a little bit niche. Or it only works in not all games, maybe just some games, like half different types of games, but still very strong pick. Just be aware that it might not always be as powerful as you might think it is. Now C tier is going to be that they are niche and maybe a little bit more mediocre effects just on its own. But these can still be extremely strong in the right kind of builds or the right kind of games, right? So C tier isn't bad. And then we get to D, which, as you can see, there's no F. So D is the bottom tier. And again, we're not saying never take D ones. These are just something that often have much weaker effects and are very niche. Mostly these are for like the edges that are kind of more for flavor than anything, which can still be an awesome pick for sure. And me and Carl, we often talk about as a game master, you should always try to if somebody took one of these, try to work it in somehow.
Sure.
Sometimes, very rarely, D can be much stronger in a specific type of game. But again, it's not like never pick this. It's just be very if you do pick this, if you're doing it for flavor, that's fine. But as far as optimization, it's probably not a good pick, 80% of the time. Now, S tier isn't ooh, totally overpowered, broken. For us, this is just going to be our best in class, which means best in category. So both me and Carl will have our picks for each category.
Total opinion. Totally an opinion.
Combat. Yeah. So we might even copy it this is an A1, but it's also his S tier one, right? So if that made all sense, Carl, you have any questions as we get into it?
No, it makes total sense to me. Cool. I hope it makes total sense to everybody else. But let's go ahead and jump in.
All right.
So why don't we get right into it and kick it off? Eric, you want to kick it off?
Sure. Very first one. Now, I want to say something about background edges. This is going to be the most varied of all the categories of edges. It pretty much has a little bit of every type of gameplay in it. So when we're judging these, right, it's a very universal take. Where when we're doing the combat edges, right, that's all going to be about combat specifically. So just take that in mind. We're starting out with Alertness.
Alertness.
This gives you +2 to notice rolls to hear, see, or otherwise sense the world around him. Now, I want to say this is not all notice rolls. So notice rolls to intuit something, right? Like intuition from D&D, or kind of notice rolls to like look for clues or through paper. So like just as an example, here's the investigator edge. As you can see, it gives you +2 to notice rolls to search through desks and stuff, to look for clues. So they can't do the same thing, if that makes sense. But still, lost it there. Put it right back. Here we go. Yeah, Carl, this one is, I mean, it both fits the... Notice is one of the most used skills in the game, and while this isn't all notice rolls, it's the majority of notice rolls you make. And when we talk about bonuses from edges or abilities, +2 is the biggest and the best you're going to get. I would say then the next one down is free rerolls and +1. Then the next one down after that is free rerolls on a failure. And then below that is ignoring 2 points of penalties. That's how kind of most Savage Worlds, wouldn't you say, Carl? That's how.
I think depending on the edge and where it is, then ignoring 2 points of penalties, that's a little higher than some of these other ones, I think, based on...
Well, the problem with the ignoring penalties, yeah, you're right. In some cases, it is stronger, is that it doesn't always have an effect, right?
Right.
Like even in those cases,
right. Yeah.
So exactly. That's why for me, like a constant thing that you can do all the time is better. Maybe it's kind of in balance with on a failure you get to free roll. Regardless, +2 is the best one. So this is the best bonus you can get on one of the most widely skills you can get. So, I don't know what else is there to say, right? This is an A tier 1. I mean, do you have anything else to say about Alertness?
No, it's like you said, if we go by our definition, used all the time, great bonus.
Yeah.
So let's go and take a look at our tier sheet, and there's Alertness right at A.
Right at the front of A. We'll kind of try to weight this a little bit. So pretty much always a good pick, right?
So now we got our tiers, and then we got sub tiers within the tiers.
Yeah, sub tiers within those tiers, getting deep.
All right. So next we talk about Ambidextrous. Very cool one. This one's all about if you're deft with both your hands. So the bottom line is you get you don't have the offhand penalty, the -2 offhand penalty that you would normally get, and then if you hold a weapon in each hand, you get the parry bonuses for both. So some weapons have parry bonuses, +1, and so you can get that for both, so that they would ultimately basically stack. So this one is a interesting one because it becomes much more powerful when you combine it with other edges.
For sure. I mean, this is one of the 2 required edges for dual wielding. Now, we did a whole video on dual wielding. We did builds with dual wielding. So if you're more interested in that, check that out. As we talked about in those videos, the other edges are the better ones, quote unquote, because they get rid of more negatives. So I'll bring it up here. So that is going to be 2-fisted and 2-gun kid. So 2-fisted is for melee weapons, 2-gun kid is for ranged weapons. So when you're dual wielding, you have to choose a primary hand, right? And so when Carl was talking about the offhand penalty, that's with your offhand. So if you're right-handed, any kind of attack you use with your left hand is a -2. But then you also have multi-action penalties. So 2-fisted gets rid of both multi-action penalties for both actions when you're using 2 melee weapons. So that's why technically it's better. But you're probably getting both of them when this happens. Now, if you get all 3, you can kind of do a gun and sword kind of build. So yeah, I mean, it's a combat edge. It's definitely something that is on
its own, it's
useful if you're doing that. Yeah,
on its own, it's useful, it's interesting, but it doesn't really come to its own unless you're adding in those other edges.
For sure. So yeah, in my opinion, this is C ranked just because it can be very powerful in a build, but it's pretty niche on its own. Like you have to build towards it and like combine all these things. I don't know. Would you consider it higher than that, or?
I think it's a B. Yeah, for sure, because you need those other ones to.
Oh, you think a B, not a C?
No, I think it's a B. I think personally, I think it's a B just because it does play into the other ones. So I guess if it's not standalone, it's a C. But the fact that it's a building block for others, that's where I kind of put it as a B.
We'll put it for now. We'll just put it like here. We'll put it somewhere between those two, for sure.
All right. So the next one, going down the list here is
Arcane Background.
Gee, I wonder whose favorite that one is. So go ahead.
This one is obviously pretty hard to rank because it's just allowing you to do an arcane background, and arcane backgrounds can have, a wide gamut of power level and usefulness. But if there is powers in your game, it's hard to even talk about. But I would say that on a lot of videos, I've talked about how arcane backgrounds are a game changer for most characters. I think even if you're not focusing all the way on being an arcane caster, because of the way limitations work, being able to do stuff like self and the aspect enables you to even get make it really cheap and give yourself +1s on casting those powers. So you can, even outside of something with like fantasy or Savage Pathfinder, you can create kind of like a self-buffing arcane background that gives you bonuses, so you don't have to invest a lot in skills, if that makes sense, Carl. So for me, we can't really put it on the board normally, but it's definitely my S tier edge as far as background edges. It's pretty much every game, if I'm able to, I'll probably have some sort of arcane background, right, Carl? Like, I don't think I've ever played a game with you that hasn't had some, including Mystic Powers, that has not had.
No, you've always had some kind of powers, whether it's Mystic Powers, whether it's an arcane background. You just like the flavor of it. Other folks kind of like to grunt through it, and they like to play somebody who can hit really hard, but you like somebody with a lot of finesse and interesting things. So, and arcane backgrounds bring that. So.
But like I said, just from an optimization standpoint, or from, flavor too, like even if you're somebody who likes hitting things, getting the speed power with quickness, or, boost fighting or something, right? Or protection, like those self buffs can be a big game changer and really make combat more interesting and more fun and make yourself more powerful. So yeah, S tier for me.
Okay. I agree. That's a great one. So then let's hit Arcane Resistance.
Yep. And I'm going to have improved Arcane Resistance as well. That's just down there.
Okay. So Arcane Resistance, basically you've got penalties to those who are trying to cast powers against you. So enemies' arcane abilities targeting a hero suffer at -2 penalty, and magic damage is reduced by 2, which is good. If the hostile power fails to affect the hero, it still activates and still consumes power points. So that's fantastic. This includes magical bonus granted to weapons, such as the smite power or the damage bonus of magical weapons. And then improve increases the damage and the penalties to 4 from -2. So this is it's interesting. It's a good edge, but it seems like it's something that wouldn't be used. People don't seem to use it or pick it much because the game master doesn't bring casters maybe against you as much as they should. I don't know. It doesn't seem like it's one that's...
Carl, 100%, you're absolutely right. I think there's a couple things to break down here. There's some specifics that get lost. The first thing to look for is that in its text, its abilities that target the hero suffer -2 penalty. That's a very important distinction because that does not include burst powers. And I would say that majority of the time, game masters are casting burst powers against the party. So, and this is also this is arcane abilities, so it can include, maybe it can include, if they're nice, like a dragon, like if it was like some type of single target thing from a creature like ability, but it has to target you. So as you said, game masters aren't always bringing casters against you. They might save that for like bosses or mini bosses, right? And even if they are, it cannot be a burst template. So that really does limit its its flexibility, its usefulness. So just as a comparison, like here's Arcane Protection. Ooh, I don't know why that. Hold on. I don't know why this got. Hold on, let me try this again. Here we go. Here's Arcane Protection, right? So Arcane Protection, which is a power. I mean, the edge Arcane Resistance always is on, but Arcane Protection suffers you from powers that affect that character, right? So that includes the burst template. So yeah, like you said, Carl, it's really. Oh, that's the wrong one. It doesn't. Hold on, let me get it back.
What were we saying about we ranked up?
Yeah,
I guess we didn't really rank up. So
okay. It doesn't really affect you all the time. And the whole thing with Hasa power fails to affect the hero due to the penalty. So that's something like if I cast a bolt against, if Carl cast a bolt against my character and he got a 4, it would fail, but he'd still have to pay the full amount of power points. So that's that distinction. So yeah, because it doesn't affect you with burst templates, this is definitely I don't know, this is hard because the effects are good, right? A -2 to both damage and to a -2 to targets is a big deal, but the damage too has to be from the smite, and the damage bonus from magical weapons means a lot, but like that just only happens sometimes too. So this is the hard one to kind of judge, right? I'm leaning towards C here, even though the effects are good enough, they're strong enough, right? But it seems so niche. Like even in a game that obviously has magic, unless they're throwing tons of magic users at you, it's just not going to be that strong of an option compared to other things, right? I don't know. What would you think as far as ranking this?
No, I think it's a C because of what you said. I mean, it's the what it brings to the table, except for the burst side of things, is good, but also it's got a little niche to it. Niche-ness? Is that a word? To it because because of how often spellcasters are being thrown against the party. Now, if this is a campaign where it's all spellcasters and it's things like that, well, then it's probably a much more powerful something for a character to have as they go against others. But I think in general, it's not as awesome as it could be. So yeah, I'll throw it a C. Good solid C. Yep. Cool.
Now I almost want to say that the improved Arcane Resistance is better in a weird way. I don't know. I mean, it's a much bigger. It's a much bigger effect, right? I don't know. Do we want to put it separately? But like, I feel like at that point, if you took Arcane Resistance and you're getting a lot of use out of it, then yeah, like upgrading to -4 damage and -4 to target is good. So I don't know. What do you think? Do you think it should be along in C, or should it be upgraded to B?
I'd throw it on the line. Do one of those line things again.
We'll do another line one. Okay. There we go. We're getting crazy. All right.
All right. Well, cool. So that's hey, so we moved into the really most important of all background edges that we possibly can have. So
here we go. All right. Yeah, that's a funny, Carl, because here we have Aristocrat. Aristocrat basically is you are from a nobility or like the upper crust, the 1%, right? And what does it give you? It gives you +2 persuasion when networking with the upper crust. It also gives you +2 common knowledge rolls to made to know the etiquette of the upper class, family trees, heraldry, things like that. Oh, this one's rough. So I mean, I'm going to say it ahead of time. This is one of the few D rank edges that I'm going to say, Carl. Just I'll explain it. It's definitely flavorful. I mean, it's so weird. Like the +2 to persuasion would be really good, but it's only for networking, which is just like, so networking is how you kind of narratively gather information. Just, you don't have to always like act that out, right? You're like, I'm going and hitting the streets to see if I can find out this information. That it's only within those circles and it gives you the +2. It's just so weird. Like, even when you are networking, do you always go to the upper crust? Like, what if you need to know about a black market? Would it even work? In the upper crust? You know what I mean? Like, so it's not even just +2 in networking. It's just so niche. It's so very niche. And you also have to be in a game where there is, aristocracy around a lot. Yep. I mean, maybe if you're in a game that's just taking place in one city, but I feel like, Carl, when you're dealing with like a really powerful king, or you're dealing with a really powerful business magnate or something, that's probably a scene that you're acting out, right? Like if you're meeting the king, it's probably not like narratively off screen. So I'm
networking with the king. Yeah, I did my networking with the king, and I got the information we needed. And you guys don't have to deal with the king because I networked with him. I got it figured out. So where are you going to throw this one?
I mean, this to me is a D. I'm leaving it to you. Like I would say, in a game that if it's in a game where you are dealing a lot with what you might consider this, but even then, like it's just never. There's so many other options, like just increasing your persuasion by charismatic, or getting a lawn, or increasing your common knowledge rolls. It's just so much more useful than this, right? This is just way too specific. So unless you have another idea, Carl.
No.
Here we go. This is definitely one of our probably few D rank ones. There we go.
Yep, that one's not winning any awards in my book for sure. So, but speaking of persuasion rolls and improving persuasion rolls, our next one on the list is attractive. See if I can bring that one up there. There we go, attractive. So this one basically gives you a +1 to performance and persuasion rolls if the target is attracted to his general type. So so you have to be attracted to him, then you get a +1 to performance or a +1 to persuasion rolls, and then very attractive gives you a +2. So I think this one is I feel like this one's a little niche-y. Because it has that limitation that it has to be generally attracted to your type in some shape, and then you get a +1, so it's not a +2, it's only a +1. So what are your thoughts on that? I think it's kind of in the niche category. Now explain to me why you need a vigor of D6. That's what I'm trying to figure out.
I don't know. I mean, there's plenty of people who are, I don't know. I guess because it just means that's your physicality. Like you are probably built a little bit more or in good shape.
Anyway, I find that one a
square cut jaw. It's
weird
a
requirement
for sure.
Weird requirement. So
the first thing to talk about is this is the only kind of way to get a flat modifier to performance. Which is just interesting, just to know. It's kind of weird, but this one's tricky. I think it is very niche because of that. Now this can vary a lot depending if you're just playing a game that just takes place on Earth, right, with just humans, then this is going to be a better edge because then you're just dealing with sexuality against for genders or whatever. So there's going to definitely be a percentage of the population, no matter what, that will be quote unquote is able to be attracted to you, right? If you're in a game that's a fantasy game where there's a lot of different races or ancestries, if you're in a sci-fi game where there's tons of, especially if there's like aliens, because like elves and humans and dwarves, they like to mingle, right? But blorbs and rock people and humans probably aren't going to mingle, just an elite few maybe that have that taste. I'm not judging, but so that, in those games, it really, really cuts it out. Here's what I would say, Carl, and it's definitely up to your game master a lot, but I think it shouldn't be that they are attracted to it. I think is that they can recognize that they are an attractive person. So, even in our society, attractive people, it's just easier for them, right? And it's not always because that person's attracted to them. Like if you are a straight man and you see another man that is a very attractive man, even though you're not attracted to them, you can recognize they're attractive, and usually, right, people will kind of treat them better or defer to them most of the time, and just a more favorable, right? I don't know if you would agree with that or not, Carl, but I feel like that's the psychology of how humanity is that we kind of just defer to attractive people generally, right?
Well, and I guess that's why it was obvious to Donkey that the girl dragon was attractive. So I don't know. I'm not sure how if I completely.
I just mean that like if you are if like a human would recognize another human is attractive. You know what I'm saying?
But that would not necessarily give you a +1. In some cases, if I'm not attractive, maybe that gives you a -1 because I'm hostile towards your beauty. So I guess
true. It could be circumstance. So that brings up another point, Carl, is that like when you're using this edge, the game master has to do not a lot of extra work, but extra work every single time to find out if they're attractive, like make an attraction die or something, or like decide on their sexuality, right? You know what I mean? Like it kind of is a weird way to put it on there. I think some really nice GMs will just be like, you know what? As long as you're like the same gender most of the time, or sorry, the same species, you're going to just have this bonus, right? So this one to me is a C because of all the things we've talked about. It has good effects, but it's just like very, very niche, and it can really depend on the type of game you're playing. It can also really depend on, what your game master is doing, right?
Right, and how they adjudicate the game and
exactly
letter of the law versus flavor and spirit of what's trying to be done here. So
it's definitely something to talk to your game master about. But like I said, it's the only way to get a flat modifier to performance, and performance doesn't have any other ways to really help it beyond like getting rerolls on support rolls, right? But in general, performance just doesn't have any other ways to directly boost them. So so that's you might have to take this if you're building a performance kind of build. But even when we're talking about support roles, persuasion, if we're just talking about base Savage Worlds, persuasion does all the things that performance does. You can use work the crowd with persuasion. So unless you're doing like Savage Pathfinder and have Bard and you're using performance for other stuff, or you have the Troubadour Edge for battle or something, then this might be the only way to get a bonus to that. So yeah.
Then we've got a quite the granddaddy of crazy edges coming up now. So after attractive, we hit the B's, and we come into Berserk, which is kind of Berserk.
All right.
It's a big one. There's a lot to unpack on this one. Yeah.
There's a lot to unpack. We'll go through it kind of quickly. So Berserk is the barbarian rage type of ability that's in here. Another combat edge mixed into the background edges. So after a character suffers a wound or is shaken, now this is from physical damage only, so magical damage doesn't count. The hero must make a smarts roll or go berserk. Now, how they kind of buffed it from last edition, you can voluntarily fail the check if she likes, which is definitely an added buff, a needed buff. What does this give you? It gives you a strength increase, so 1 die type to every wild attack, to every melee attack. But you have to wild attack, which is a +2 hit, +2 damage. It leaves you vulnerable. And you can't do any skills that require wit or concentration. So you can't use like taunt or cast spells, but you can use intimidation because you're just kind of like raging, yelling scary yells. It also gives you +2 to toughness, and you ignore 1 level of wound penalty, which stacks with other abilities that do that, like what's it called? A steel. I can't remember at the moment.
Oh. No, you made me think.
One second. We'll edit this. Don't worry. Nerves of Steel. So
Nerves of Steel.
It stacks with Nerves of Steel. So that's a lot of stuff. But finally, Reckless Abandon means anytime you roll a critical failure on a fighting check, you hit a random target within range that could be friend or foe. And if there's no targets, you just kind of miss. Now, after 5 consecutive rounds of Berserk, you take a level of fatigue. At 10 rounds, you take another level of fatigue, and then the rage ends. They may also choose to end the rage at any time by making a smarts rolls at -2 as a free action, and you could do that before the rage gets to 5 or 10 to ignore that fatigue. And then you start the count again if you go in Berserk again in the same battle. So if you were able to get out of it, but then you got damaged and you went into it again, they still add. It's not like the timer restarts. So that was a lot. I don't know. I mean, I always liked that Berserk was here, Carl, but when you actually kind of look at the stuff, it is definitely on the weaker side, I think, and really needs really is like dying for a lot of support from other edges. So, when you look at Savage Pathfinder, the Barbarian there has just such a better version of this, but let's break it down. So the increase to strength is good, right?
Yep.
But, when you're talking about damage, it's really not that big of a deal. So something that you want to look out for when you are doing Berserk is you want to pump up your strength all the way to D12. So that turns into a D12 +1. Now, normally, I think, my opinion, for optimizationally, most of the time as a melee character, you don't need to pump up your strength really above a D8, D10, honestly. There's other things to do that will increase your damage way more, right? But it's there. But then you have to wild attack, which is something that is a downside, right? That's not a bonus, like doing a +2 hit, +2 damage, because you could decide to do that anyways, them forcing you to do it. So this is kind of balances out a little bit. Then you get +2 toughness and ignoring 1 level of wound penalty. Now that is equal to 2 edges because 2 advances. 1 level of toughness is roughly in strength when we're talking about ancestral abilities to 1 skill point or half an edge. So 2 points of toughness is equal to an edge. And we know that ignoring a wound penalty to an edge. So that's the biggest meat of this right here, right? And then the whole critical failure effect, that's not horrible. It's just kind of there. The fatigue is the much worse thing that you just get fatigue automatically. And the only way you can end this is with a smarts roll at -2, right? Which sucks. So all in all, here are my kind of issues with it, Carl, is that like, for one, when we're talking, this isn't something that like one of the things they did for Barbarian and Savage Pathfinder was they can just choose to use it whenever they want. And I think that is when somebody takes this, I just let them do that because, if you take this edge, you have to like almost force yourself to get, if you wanted this to be used, you're using this, you almost have to force yourself to get hit, to get shaken or to get wounded, right? So this could be like round 1, round 2, even round 3 that it doesn't even pop off yet, And when you get hit, you're like, oh, I could take 3 wounds or I could get wounded, so I activate Berserk. You know what I mean? Like it's a weird place to be in, and then like as a frontline melee fighter, like okay, I'll take 3 wounds, and yes, you ignore 1 level of wound penalty, but that's probably like being counteracted immediately because you took a wound just to get into Berserk, if that makes sense. And then you're going to be taking fatigue because that smarts roll at -2 is really hard to get around, and there's no other way to turn it off except for they don't even say technically when the battle ends. Like if you look at it, there's not like when the battle ends your rage stops. It doesn't say that, right? So technically raw, you have to keep rolling those smarts rolls like every round, and you could just be accruing fatigue outside of combat. So I don't know.
Well, there's only so much fatigue. Only so much fatigue you can accrue before you become incapacitated anyway.
Yes.
So, but I'm going to go with raw. I know you're talking about, hey, you might run it a different way, but raw. Yeah. This kind of it has some advantages. But to get those advantages kind of sucks to get there. So that like you said, you got to get hit. You got to be wounded or shaken before you even have a chance of it happening. Now, you can make it happen because it says you can voluntarily fail to check. So you can
absolutely you still have to get hit.
But you got to get hit.
Damage or shaken.
Yeah, you got to be shaken or get a wound. I don't know. It's got to activate.
It might be controversial, Carl, but I mean, I'm almost... Honestly, for me, this is almost a D-ranked edge, honestly. Like, I know it definitely... It can be strong if things add up, and you can definitely build around it. And it's not that it's niche. I mean, it's only niche in the way of, like, when you're in combat, it might not pop off at all, or it might pop off late in the combat, right? Like...
Right.
So, I don't know. What would you say, Carl? Like, I'm leaning toward D, but I can see C too, and that might be controversial.
It's definitely on that C boundary with D because what it takes to make it happen, what it takes to get out of it, the fact that you're forced to do things like wild attack, which in a lot of cases, when people wild attack, they usually. At least I find my players, you're usually in a position where the vulnerability is not going to be a big deal. So I go one-on-one, I wild attack, but this forces you to. So you could be like in the middle of a million people and suddenly you've wild attacked and now they're just going to pile onto you. So I don't know. I really think edges that get rid of wound penalties, they're great, but you don't want to be wounded in the first place. So,
and that's the problem with this is that you probably are, if you're shaken, maybe, but maybe you're wounded. So immediately that like gone, get into this, right? So I think if you look at the Savage Pathfinder version, it's just so much better overall. And there's a lot more support with it, like being able to increase wild attacking. Like if there was another edge, I think Fantasy Companion has it, where you can increase the wild attack damage and attack, right, to +4. And that's a cool, like, if it was a prerequisite for Berserk, that would make this a lot better. But as it is, like, even if you're building around this, it's just rough. It's just rough. So, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's absolutely true. That's where I would say. Okay. All right. So that's Berserk. So now let's go on to our next one, which is Brave. These are, you are not afraid of stuff. You've learned to control your emotions, or you're jaded. And so you get +2 on your fear checks and subtract 2 from fear table results, which isn't a bad thing if you're really using the fear table a lot. Don't want to have a heart attack. So, so
let's actually show the fear table real quick.
There you go. There's a fear table. So yeah, you get a 22 plus, you get a heart attack. So that -2 will help out in areas where there's a high fear factor. Or a creature that has a high fear factor. That's nice. Unfortunately, it's still kind of niche because
extremely
it has to be in a setting, and obviously Deadlands or Deadlands Lost Colony or something like that. They have fear as a kind of a part of sort of how the lore builds up. But in a lot of campaigns, I'd say for me, 90% of the campaigns I run, there's no fear in it because of the setting. It doesn't make sense. We're not playing weird science fiction or so obviously you could have creatures that were like cause fear and stuff but I don't use it a lot. So it very, very targeted towards those kind of campaigns. So what do you think about that, Eric?
Yeah, like you said, it's very niche. Like even in campaigns that it's around, it might not even be all the time, right? But the effects are good. I mean, there's not any other way to get like bonuses like that on spirit rolls for things. So
right.
+2 on that is good. And then the fear, then it also has this deduction in the fear table. So even if you do fail, some of these are bad. I mean, check this out. Like at the higher levels, we have phobias, which are you're just getting hindrances and then a heart attack. So, it's a struggle. I mean, I almost would say here, I feel like it's a C. I don't know, because it's like, it is extremely niche, don't get me wrong, but in games where it is a factor, this is like a very, very, very good bonus, right? That can really save you and even if you fail, there's kind of another level in there to make it less bad. Right?
Yeah, this can really save your bacon. This can really save your bacon in one of those games for sure.
So do you think it's C or do you think it's a D level one?
Well, what's your definitions? So go back to your definitions. C is...
All right, let's go back to definitions.
So let's go back to the page.
C is niche or less mediocre effects on its own. Often can be very strong with specific builds, I should say, or specific games.
So that's calls out that this is a C, based on your definition. Yeah. So,
all right, let's pop it in the C category. Whoop. There we go. Okay.
Oh, you got 2 Braves on the screen, so double up. You got now, Brave in the A category too. So.
There we go. Oh, my bad.
All right. Okay, so then the next one is Brawny.
Here we go. It's Brawny. So Brawny is you increase your size by 1, which also increases your toughness, and you increase your strength die by 1 die type higher when determining encumbrance and minimum strength to use armor, weapons, and equipment without penalty, and you can't increase the character size over 3. So this has a lot to it. This is definitely one of the most universally useful background edges, I feel. This actually does 3 things. So number 1, it increases your size, which has the hidden benefit of if you're doing grappling. Let me throw this on right here. Oh, I got this. I know what the problem is. Okay, so this is from the grappling section. Creatures may not generally grapple a foe more than 2 sizes larger than themselves, unless they have exceptional reach or strength to their size. So, not huge, but it does do something, right? If you're grappling, it's a little minor benefit of you'll be able to, affect some more creatures than you might not have normally. The main things here are it gives you a +1 toughness. Now, +1 toughness is very, very hard to come by. We have Brawny, we have Berserk, we have the protection power on arrays, and then there's like ancestral abilities, and that's like pretty much it. Getting pure toughness is very difficult, so this is really, really nice. And then that increasing the increasing your strength die for encumbrance and minimum strength is so important. A lot of builds I talk about, as I talked about before, strength on its own is just not that good from an optimization standpoint to increase. Like it does increase your damage, it does increase those minimum strength things, but often it's better to take something like Brawny. Now, this is one of 3 edges that do that. The other 2 are Soldier, and there's a new one that we'll talk about at the end of this video from the sci-fi book. But this is the best one by far as a melee build, but like a ranged build, right? That like you want like a really, really big gun. It's often better to take Brawny than to increase your strength to a D8, if that makes sense. Now you do need a strength of D6 to get this. So automatically that means like stuff that is like a D8, right, for weapons, and a D8 for armor and things like that. But as you can see, like this is just a better buy, in my opinion, than often increasing your strength to a D8. Unless you really, really want high strength for a really high weapon, or if you're using Berserk or something, this is just way worth it. So I don't know. To me, this is an A rank 1. It's pretty much universally useful and has really, really, really good effects. I don't know. What's your opinion on this?
Well, I think it gets close to that A just by the +1 in toughness. Like you said, there's so few ways to increase toughness. Now, I don't know how I feel about, people who want to be fighty characters are going to increase their strength anyway. So this really becomes more interesting for a character that's not that's
like a shooter.
Yeah. Where, Brawny might help them, wear more armor or heavier armor, but, in the end of the day, they're not trying to be a heavy melee character trying to do the maximum damage that they can. But it definitely +1 to toughness. You just can't. How can you argue with that, right? So
yeah.
Definitely, I agree that that's up there in the tiers.
Okay. Bam, there we go.
So it's right up there with alertness. So far we got those couple. So then let's talk about Brute. You are the Brute Squad. All right. So the whole point of Brutes is they can treat athletics as being linked to strength instead of agility for purposes of advancement. The character may also resist athletics tests with strength if they choose. And then finally, the short range of a thrown weapon is added by +1, double that for medium range. So it shows, we see on the screen here. So 3, 6, 12 becomes 4, 8, 16.
Yeah.
Basically. So there's multiple things. The bottom line though is you're treating strength for things that normally would be linked to like agility. So your athletics would be linked to strength. Athletics tests can be strength instead. Which is interesting because athletics test, you could use strength, but your athletics is linked to your strength. So you probably would be adding points to athletics anyway. But anyway, so I don't know. It's interesting. I wouldn't say it's if you're a fighter character and you really want to go heavy into just being strong but not agile in a sense, then sure, this might be useful, but it feels very niche-y to me as well.
It is a very specific build in mind, obviously. I mean, this is really for grappling and for like a grappling throwing build, right? If your main thing is you want to do is grappling, and then for any range stuff you can throw. Now, there is a lot of inner cohesion here with itself, because when you look at a throwing weapon, so throwing weapons damage is like a melee weapon. When you throw a dagger, it's your strength plus the damage die of the weapon, so like a D4, right? Or if it's a D6 weapon. So this enables you to like just increase your strength, and you're basically increasing your, die for throwing that also affects the damage, which is, there's no other one that does that, right? When we're talking about fighting, right? You're increasing agility for that. That's not increasing the damage of a fighting attack. Or shooting, right? It's not increasing the damage because it's just static damage. So this is the only way to kind of be optimal with just one attribute. The problem here, though, Carl, that I think you even brought up, is that if you are being a frontline character, you're probably going to want some fighting, right? So you're going to be increasing fighting anyways, and you're going to want agility for that. Agility is also very useful for things like evasion rolls, right? You're still going to be getting tests a lot. You could still be, fighting tests are a big thing. Shooting tests are a big thing. So there's still a lot of ways agility is used. So whenever I've seen people take this, it's not like they just keep their agility at D4 and then their strength is like a D12. It's often like, agility's D6 or D8 and strength is D10 or something. But it is, if you just want to do grappling, and, the increase to range here with throwing isn't that powerful, but it's nice that it's there, right? So, it is a very specific build of you are a grappler who likes throwing things. I mean, that's what it's all about. So
I'm a grappler who likes throwing things. Yeah.
And on its own, right, when you just take this, it's not giving you anything. It's just allowing you to do strength as that. So I still think, to me, this isn't D rank. I think you can have a very powerful build with this. I don't know, Carl.
Well, and it also has like 2 requirements. Both have to be D6. So that's also that's also you.
But you probably the strength of a D6
anyway. But
you already have strength of a D6. That's just, I mean, you wouldn't take this if you're not going to have high strength. And the vigor is, you're probably a close range person, right? Throwing is close range, grappling is close range. So it's not crazy requirement.
It's not, but if you're really bumping up your strength to take advantage of this, and we're talking at novice, and then you're going to take your vigor at D6, you've got other attributes that are going to be much lower. And so you talk about, you want agility to be high anyway if you're a fighter character. So
maybe.
I don't know. So there's a lot of requirements here, I think.
There is a lot of requirements.
You're going to take it at novice.
If you do build this, you're only take this if that's, you want to hyper, like, don't take this and kind of like, oh, maybe I'll do agility and strength. No, like, keep agility at D6, right? Have fighting at D6 or D8 or something, and that's it. And then really, really focus on being a grappler and a throwing build. Now, grappling isn't the best, I'll say that. Grappling on its own, usually better with like devices, powers, I would say, because when you grapple, but in a game that has no powers, this is much more powerful, if that makes sense. There's very few ways when you don't have entangle around, this becomes much better. But also, besides grappling, this is also stuff like pushing. So this is still something to be used with a shield. You can really, if you like to push people around a lot, this can also be really good for defensively, right? You just have to keep fighting at D6 or D8 and take things like the block edge. Take Brawny. This works, kind of well with Brawny. But you don't need. So I don't know. I think it's not so. It is flavorful. I still think it can be pretty strong, when you want it. So that's, to me, it's a C1. But where do you land, Carl?
Yeah, definitely right in the C category for sure.
Okay, we'll kind of put it at the.
Gonna put it at the boundary again.
Well, we'll just put it at the bottom. We'll put it at the bottom over here. There we go.
Oh wow, it's like way over on the right too. So it doesn't even get to hang out with the other. Yeah. It doesn't get to hang out with the other edges.
No,
even.
It doesn't. It doesn't. Savage World, one of the best games today. Savage World, Benny, enhance my play. Savage World, different setting any day.